It scared the hell out of the entire world. A monster great white shark picking off men, women, and children. Decades later, the fear remains. And so do the sharks. Lurking in the darkness. Waiting. Searching. Stalking. No matter where you dip your toes, chances are sharks will be there too. And they all have one thing in common. A taste for blood. There are nearly 400 different kinds. Scary, ugly, funny-looking, freakish. They can be teeny tiny to monstrously massive. But know this, they're all killers. And we've got 10 of them on their deadliest behavior. These are the bad boys of the sea, and it's time to discover what really goes on through the eyes of a master predator. At first glance, these little sharks seem like graceful and delicate creatures. Around 1.5 meters and 18 kilograms. Harmless, right? Well, don't be fooled. Their faces tell the whole story in permanent, nasty-looking scowls. The white-tip reef shark. Sleek and scary. They're named for the flag-like peaks of white on their fins, but they're far from a sign of surrender. They scoot around the warm, shallow waters of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Like here, off the coast of Costa Rica. And they're fearless. They sidle up to anything, even humans. But don't worry, we're not typically on the menu. Unless its cousin, the oceanic white tip, is nearby and you happen to be holding a handful of fresh, bloody fish. Besides, most of the time, white-tip reef sharks just sleep the day away, lazing about on the ocean floor or hiding in ledges and caves. Sometimes they even crash out on top of each other. But like they say, the freaks come out at night. And boy, do they ever. They blanket the ocean floor by the hundreds. Swimming in formation and searching for holes and crevices where some of their favorite prey like to hide. Fish, crustaceans, octopus, even stingrays aren't safe. It's an underwater feeding frenzy, a shark mosh pit of violent pushing and twisting. But it has to be. It's not like their prey is easy to get to. An entire third of the white-tip's brain is devoted to smell. Whipping their heads from side to side sends water flowing over millions of olfactory cells, which help them sniff out meals or drops of blood a mile away. And these guys also have a sixth sense. Tiny black pores on their noses, called ampullae of Lorenzini, allow the white-tip to sense electrical charges in the water, like the splashes given off by a doomed fish. They jam themselves into the tiniest of spaces, and despite their tough skin and perfect physique for the hunt, not all of them escape without battle wounds. Once prey is caught, it's a fight between the top and bottom teeth to chomp it up into bite-sized chunks. perfect for breaking down a big reef fish dinner. The white tip, small but deadly. So size doesn't seem to matter when it comes to sharks. You don't have to be huge to be scary, or an effective killer. Which is good news for these guys, because even though they're not very big, they pack a mean punch. The blacktail, also known as the gray reef shark. And this is one of their favorite places to congregate, by the dozens. 1,900 kilometers off the coast of Africa and around the island of Mauritius, where the dodo bird once squawked. It's an intricate maze of reefs, caverns, caves, and some pretty funky pits that attract the gray sharks. The pits look like they were created by giant whirlpools, and their shape actually turns already turbulent water into violent vortices. But for grays, it's the perfect home. And they come in hordes, 50, 60, 70, about 15 meters down. Like their white-tip cousins, grays average around 1.5 meters and 23 kilograms. They're curious, brave, and downright dangerous when provoked. They even have the same grumpy grins on their faces. But this isn't just grown-up territory. It's also a nursery. Most of these sharks are young. Females usually give birth to 1 to 4 pups per litter. So with dozens of little ones floating around, at least 10 to 15 moms are delivering. Why they come here to these secret foaming waters is a mystery. Maybe it's because there's protection in numbers. The pups still run the risk of being hoovered up by a hungry adult. Or maybe it's because all the bubbles create more oxygen. Since they have to swim to breathe, this might give them a much-needed break. And they can save up their energy for nighttime, when they do their best hunting. For the kids, there's an added bonus. Extra oxygen gives them more energy to grow. It's kind of like a washing machine or jacuzzi. The waves churn up, crash against the island, hit the rocks, and the oxygen water shoots right down into the pit. The sharks love it. Eventually, they gather up and start moving out. Then, they hit the reef to hunt. Gray reef sharks normally hunt on their own. But here, they work in a big mob, like a bunch of aggressive juvenile delinquents, scouring for food. It's quick, efficient work. Because they're physically designed to dominate in this kind of environment. A long, thin body, big fins, rounded snout, and a mouthful of sharp, pointy teeth make easy pickings of fish, squid, crustaceans, and cephalopods like octopus. While gray reef sharks aren't notorious for attacks on humans, it's best not to mess with them during mealtime. If you do, beware. A gray won't hesitate to show why it's one of the world's deadliest sharks. It's sleek, curvy, and loves to slink around warm, shallow waters, devouring decadent seafood and having more sex than James Bond. But this is no Cold War-era spy. This is the nurse shark. Okay, sure, they're usually pretty harmless, but not when it comes to their romantic escapades. Like 007 himself, interrupt a steamy session and things could turn deadly. Nurse sharks kind of look like giant catfish, with their signature curled, hinged mouths and puckers that suck in food with the power of 8 vacuum cleaners. But even at 4 meters and 109 kilograms, a female's far more reminiscent of a femme fatale than a mild-mannered school nurse. No wonder the males get all riled up, and they're not shy about it. Most sharks are wary of having sex on tape, but not the nurse shark. And it all happens here in the Florida Keys. Warm water lagoons are the perfect place for nurse sharks. About 2 meters deep, lined with grass and coral and filled with queen conch, spiny lobsters and crabs. Life couldn't be better, unless you throw in a lot of sex. Females hang around the shallow area to be choosy about mates, then head off to the bedroom, a particular area within the site. It all starts with a bite, and the female doesn't seem to mind one bit. Even if it's a success, the 20 to 50 nurse sharks in the coming litter will have at least 6 fathers. Sometimes a little promiscuity is good for a girl's gene pool. But what if you need to get info from a nurse shark that isn't quite so easy? Time for a would-be Bond to get his high-tech spying help from National Geographic's Critter Cam. A high-tech camera actually operated by an animal, once it gets strapped on properly.
You're right.
Critter Cam records about 6 hours of video. Then the fin clamp releases and the camera floats to the surface. That is, if it doesn't fall off first.
There it goes.
Just a couple minutes in and the male's chasing all kinds of tail. Then he makes his move. A passionate tangle of bodies and fins sets sand flying. It's really all for show because his few attempts are unsuccessful. She literally leaves him in the dust. He moves off to deeper water to pout, rest. Looks like the old guy's not quite ready for his double O's yet. And so goes the shocking private lives of nurse sharks. Seems their behavior with or without an audience is the same. It's all about sex. He's the bad boy, the bully, the thug. He's got attitude, aggression, and testosterone. Tons of it. He doesn't just bite once. He bites again and again until he finishes the job. No one wants to play with this guy, but the problem is, he's everywhere. The bull shark. The one that makes headlines. The one that attacks. The one that kills. One of the top 3 for fatal attacks, as a matter of fact, along with the tiger and the great white. Bulls can grow to more than 3 meters and up to 227 kilograms. They get their name from their short, blunt noses that are wider than they are long. They're fast and slick, and they're not picky about what they eat. Fish, dolphins, even other sharks are on the menu. Yes, humans rank up there too, but not because we're one of their favorites. Bulls like to cruise shallow, warm water, as shallow as 3 feet, and so do we. So it's no surprise to have run-ins now and again. Oceans, lagoons, bays, rivers, you name it, and there's probably a bull there. Probably because they're armed with all kinds of neat stuff. Like super teeth. The uppers are big and heavily serrated, while the lower teeth are narrow and lightly serrated. And even when they fall out, no big deal. One more drops into place every single time, throughout the shark's life. They can flat out shred anything they want, even other sharks. And rumor has it they like to headbutt their prey before digging in, which we all know is cheating. Bulls also have a wicked sense of smell, sniffing out potential prey up to 5 kilometers away. Then they dart to their target at 18 kilometers an hour. Doesn't sound very fast, but you'd have to swim twice as fast as an Olympic champion to outsprint a bull. Probably not gonna happen. And see those small, beady eyes? Even in murky water, a bull shark sees 10 times better than a human. But what exactly do they see down there? The only way to find out is to hook a bull and strap on a critter cam.
Oh, we got something, I think. Probably a bull.
Beautiful.
Okay, we've got the critter cam almost on now.
They attach the camera to the shark's dorsal fin.
And this little juvenile male, what, is off!
Yes!
Yeah!
Yes!
He makes a quick getaway. As is fitting for a bull's reputation, it's probably prowling for its next meal. So beware. An arsenal of weapons, a bad temperament, and an appetite for just about anything might get you into trouble with this guy. Ah, Alaska. Frozen fjords, peaceful mountains, and stunning rivers. So what's this vicious killer doing here? Bear shark! This is the salmon shark. Not a very daunting name, but what other shark can survive in near freezing water? Every spring, 2 migrating species meet up in a head-to-head battle. Hungry salmon sharks and spawning salmon. The sharks travel thousands of kilometers from California to feast. The salmon travel thousands of kilometers from the open ocean to reproduce. And it all happens here, Prince William Sound. The fish have to pass through fjords to spawn in the Sound's freshwater mountain streams, so the sharks gather there to eat them up. But salmon are small and fast compared to the bulk of their opponent. Up to 3.5 meters and 454 kilograms. They are, after all, the great white's cousin, but we'll get to him later. Salmon sharks are streamlined to cut through frigid water quickly. And they're practically invisible. They have an expert sense of smell and hearing. And with eyes perched far forward on their faces, they have sharp binocular vision. Lateral motion detectors and hundreds of electroreceptors around their mouths pick up as little as 1/1,000,000th of a volt from a salmon. And just because they're big doesn't mean they're clumsy. They're surprisingly quick, thanks to flexible fins and a powerful tail. But it's a masterful circulatory system that keeps the salmon shark from freezing to death. It's not like it has fur or a massive layer of blubber to keep warm. Cold water passes over the shark's gills, carrying oxygen to the blood. Then, the cold, oxygenated blood travels through the blood vessels. But along the way, it's heated up by an exchange system called the ratia mirabilia. Basically, Veins carrying warm blood from the shark's swimming muscles transfer heat to cooler blood coming in from the gills. And its body temperature rises up to 20 degrees Celsius above water temperature. Good thing, because it looks like dinner's on. The sharks are relentless. The salmon are doomed. Even the fish that survived the massacre face death. For them, this is where life begins and ends. They were born here, and here they will spawn, lay eggs, and perish. The sharks leave the Sound, returning to Mexico for a good time. But they'll be back again next year for the Sharks Gone Wild Spring Break Salmon Fest in Prince William Sound. They're second in line for the most attacks on humans. Tiger sharks. And one of their favorite hangouts is in Western Australia's aptly named Shark Bay. At 5 meters and 907 kilograms, this guy doesn't mess around. Stripes like that of a well-known and similarly named big cat race down the shark's back and sides. And they're all attitude. Even their meals are big. Tigers devour anything in sight. Like garbage trucks of the sea, they eat everything from license plates to boat parts. And they're good hunters. They move constantly, scanning for potential meals. Their gaping mouths come in handy to gauge an object's snackability. But satisfying their shark-sized appetite takes substantial prey. One of their favorites? Try a crunchy 200-kilogram green sea turtle. Or maybe a slippery sea snake. Fanged, poisonous, and deadly. If those won't do, how about an unsuspecting dugong? 450 kilograms of easy meat that tigers just love to snack on. Armed with massive heads, powerful jaws, and huge mouths, not much gets away from a determined tiger. They're quick movers that turn and twist on a dime to catch prey. And they have a wicked sense of eyesight, taste, and smell. Rows of teeth like a bunch of sharp serrated mini saws make quick work of tricky things like turtle shells. They've also been known to tear through humans from time to time. But it's the typical story of a surfer or swimmer flapping around like a turtle or seal. One can hardly blame a tiger for going after what it thinks is some of its favorite food. Good thing they have slow metabolisms and don't have to eat very often. But they're not all bad. Sure, they chow down on all kinds of stuff. And bottlenose dolphins were forced to swim off to safer feeding grounds. But tigers likely keep both the turtle and dugong populations in check. And they also protect seagrass from being overgrazed, which benefits the structure of the ecosystem. Maybe that's why the tiger's also a critter cam candidate.
We got one already. Oh, that's a pretty shark. Look at those stripes.
A quick attachment and he's released to do what a shark does best. Swim. And swim he does. Constantly moving from top to bottom, looking for prey. Bottom line, not a good idea to ever tangle with the tiger. Let's face it, this shark looks like a freak. What's with the huge flat head and bulging eyes? This is the hammerhead. mysterious, fascinating, and deadly. 9 different species can be found in just about any warm, watery place in the world. Scalloped, smooth, mallet head, golden, scoop head, bonnet head, and the granddaddy of them all, the great hammerhead, a 6-meter, 450-kilogram beast. So what's with their big, odd noggins? Shaped like a hammer on both ends and dotted with an eye on each side? Like most sharks, hammerheads rely on a variety of things to hunt, like sight, sound, speed, and agility. But they're also armed with a few extra tricks. A huge olfactory cavity allows them to smell in 3D and snatch prey without even seeing it. So they're master hunters even in the dark. Remember the ampullae of Lorenzini pores? Well, hammerheads have more than any other shark or ray in the world. Their electrosense is so spot on, it can pick up electrical currents down to 100 millionth of a volt. Like the beating heart of a fleeing fish, or a stingray gliding over sand. But hunting isn't the hammerhead's only talent. In the Galapagos Islands, huge schools of scalloped hammerheads look like they're just hanging out having a good time. But a violent shake of the head, a sudden burst of speed, a bizarre dance move, and you've got communication. Almost like they're establishing rules or a hierarchy within the group. Or it could be all about sex. And for sharks, it's anything but romantic. A female white-tip finds herself in the wrong place at the wrong time and ends up mating with an entire gang of males. It's pretty likely her offspring will come from multiple dads. But female hammerheads seem to have a bit more say in the matter and get one-on-one time. Maybe traveling in massive groups allows them some protection. Nevertheless, hammerhead litters typically have only one dad. Another cool thing about hammerheads, the pin and pivot. And they wouldn't be able to pull it off without that funky-shaped head. Enter the spotted eagle ray, one of the great hammerhead's favorite snacks. In an instant, one entire wing is gone and it's left in a pool of blood. The shark actually uses its big flat head to pin its prey to the ocean floor. Then it rotates and pivots to pick it up and chomp it up. To see it from their point of view, enter Critter Cam.
We got a big hammerhead on this line.
This is awesome.
They suit up their volunteer.
We just gotta get this critter cam angled properly.
This animal's still in really good shape.
Perfect, just what we want.
Okay, ready?
Then he's released to start shooting his very own travel video. He swims just a meter or so under the surface the whole time, with his giant head leading the way. So it may look funny, but the hammerhead is an evolutionary wonder, an agile, cunning, intelligent killer. It's gigantic, ancient, mysterious. This is the six gill. And it's hardly changed since the Jurassic era, 200 million years ago. The best way to see one is in a sub. Hundreds of meters below the surface. In the cold, dark abyss. Not an easy place to get to, and not an easy place to live. Here, the Cayman Trench plummets 5 kilometers down, where only the hardiest, weirdest creatures survive. The pressure is over 450,000 kilograms per square meter, kind of the equivalent of being pinned by a battle tank. Needless to say, not many people get the chance to see a six-gill. But if you do, you can't miss it. Most sharks only have 5 gills, but these boys have a 6-pack. Probably to get more oxygen from the water and to support their bulk. Up to 6 meters and over 450 kilograms. Not only do they have 6 gills, they have 6 rows of teeth to match, and they won't hesitate to use them, even on each other. Their chompers, like the tiger sharks, are little mini-saws that make quick work of crustaceans, fish, rays, and marine mammals as the shark thrashes its head around. But the 6-gill throws in an added twist. It rotates its body, too, for maximum damage to prey. One thing that's missing, and probably most recognizable, is a big dorsal fin on its back. Scientists think it's because it would get in the way of their twirling meals. Black, beady eyes dot the heads of most sharks, not the 6-gill. Try fluorescent green. They squeeze every bit of light out of the darkness like night vision goggles. And to protect them, they just yank them back into their heads. You'd think at this size, the 6-gill would be slow, mild-mannered, maybe even gentle. Wrong. Throw a couple peeping toms into their environment and they transform into head-butting beasts. They rock the entire submarine. Just like any shark, they pick up even the smallest electrical signals, and the sub is overloaded with them. When ramming's not enough, they resort to what they do best, and try to eat the sub. Although 6-gills hang out in the deep most of the time, they have been seen in shallow waters. Turns out, as the sun goes down, they come up to breed and mix up their meal options. No matter where they are, this is one prehistoric predator you don't want to run into. This is the scariest shark ever. The one that attacks more humans than any other shark in the world. And it's scared the daylights out of people since 1975, when a little old horror movie named Jaws came out. No wonder it was based on the great white. After all, they're master predators, and they're humongous. 4 to 6 meters and up to 2,300 kilograms. But the great white is far more than a brainless slab of muscle. They're smart, sleek, and built to dominate, especially when it comes to dinner. To help sniff out a tasty meal, a couple hollow tubes called lateral lines alert the great white to any nearby disturbance, like a human leg or playing prey. Tiny little hairs go haywire, as if they're actually feeling the water for food. The shark waits for the perfect opportunity to ambush its victim in the deadliest possible way, from below and behind. In a violent burst of speed, the great white lunges like a missile that speeds up to 40 kilometers an hour. Whatever's on the receiving end usually isn't long for this world. The bottom teeth hold the hapless prey in place, while the tops slice off easy-to-eat chunks. If any of them succumbs to the fight, no biggie. Hundreds of others, like soldiers lying in wait, are ready to march into place. What's totally weird about the great white, at least from the neck up, is that its jaws aren't even attached to its head. They just hang around under its brain until a killer bite's needed. When that happens, the nose rises in the air, the mouth opens, the lower jaw pushes down, the mouth opens wider, then muscles and grooves in the skull actually shove the upper jaw forward, and out come the massive gums and teeth. The lower jaw lifts, catches the prey, and then the snout slams down with about 317 kilograms of force. Clearly, this is a shark designed to kill. And sure, it's got all the tiny electro-sensing pores, just like any other shark. So it's a great movement detector. But what it really relies on are its eyes. For such a monstrous-looking fish, it's pretty funny to see a great white spy hopping, popping its head out of the water to see what's going on in the world. Even underwater, with hardly any light, great whites have no problem seeing or hunting. When it's dark, light bounces into their eyes off reflective plates behind their retinas so they can see. Too bright, and the plates transform into a cool pair of built-in sunglasses. And you can try to poke one of its eyes out in defense, but they'll already be rolled back and protected, so that won't work. That's why scars are always found around the eyes and not on them. Flailing prey definitely leaves a mark, but none that'll get in the way of a great white's game. And it's one with a wide distribution. They patrol the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Oceans. Australia's where the most attacks on humans occur, since surfers and swimmers are constantly hitting the beaches. But South Africa is where the real hunting takes place. And it doesn't always happen underwater. Welcome to False Bay, a mecca for great whites and one of their favorite snacks, Cape Fur seals. Yummy, bite-sized balls of fat. It's hard enough to outswim and outsmart a great white when you're healthy. Try it injured, and you may as well cash in your chips. The only way to escape is to swim low, fast, and in a crazy zigzag pattern. Maybe confuse the issue. But for those who don't know any better, they pass right through the kill zone. Some for the first and last time. Then things get interesting. The great white does something here that it does nowhere else in the world. It launches its body out of the water in a violent breach. Seals get tossed around like rag dolls. But what's the deal? Why don't they just snatch them out of the water like regular sharks? Seems it all goes back to the game. A game of hide and seek. You wouldn't think a shark this big could hide, but it can. It scooches down to the bottom of the ocean where the water's murky. Here, the great white's perfectly camouflaged because the gray on its back hides it from prey swimming overhead. It hovers and waits, eyeing its next victim. Then, as if shot out of a cannon, the great white bursts through the surface of the water, blasting the seal with a fatal blow on the way. and it's game over. So we know the great white likes to prowl and hunt in Australia, South Africa, the Mediterranean, and the shores of North America. But what about the high seas? They're marvels of engineering, but can they take the tough conditions and freezing temperatures of the deep? Turns out they can. One great white was tracked on a 19,000-kilometer round trip from South Africa to Australia in just 9 months, swimming near the surface for long periods of time, then diving as much as 900 meters in short spurts to hunt. But it's freezing cold at 900 meters. So this marvel of engineering is armed with more than just good eyesight and a talent for picking off seals. It's all about the circulatory system. Humans have a 4-chambered heart, but a great white only has 2, which you'd think would be a disadvantage. Not really. Plenty of blood still gets pumped around this 6-meter fish. Things get even better when the gills kick in, and the great whites are massive. They have 10 of them, and each one has thousands of folds called lamellae. They're loaded with blood vessels that take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide. But beyond the heart and gills are veins and arteries that cover heat-producing muscle and warm the shark's blood. Even in frigid temperatures, the great white floats around as much as 10 degrees warmer than the water it's swimming in. No wonder traveling thousands of kilometers in a cold open ocean is no big deal for this guy. He's got it all. From head to tail, the great white is a master of its domain. Of all the sharks on the planet, none rivals this one. The biggest, heaviest shark in existence. 12 meters and 18,000 kilograms. Powering through Belize's Great Barrier Reef. This is the whale shark. And though it's surrounded by hordes of Cubera snapper, they're not the ones it's come for. It's their unborn young the shark's after. And like most nightmares, it all happens under a full moon. Females release eggs. Males release sperm. And a veritable feast is served up to the whale sharks. Then, as an added benefit, Dog Snapper joins the festivities and adds an entire second course to the menu. Stuffed with a late-night breakfast, these giants will move on until their next encounter with exploding procreators. And that, folks, rounds out our top 10. But hundreds of other shark species skulk through the world's oceans. Some have a bad attitude like the bull. Others are armed with killer instincts like the great white. But all have a taste for blood. So it's not a good idea to mimic a seal on a surfboard anytime soon. Enter their world at your own risk.